kid from the bush who grew into a legend in his own lunchtime, former SAS soldier Michael J. Malone has seen it all. This is Never Die Wondering, Mick Malone in his own words, hosted by the man himself, Mick Malone, along with Toby Malone, as they examine this long, storied career in the Australian Special Forces. Join us each week for behind-the-scenes insight, exclusive readings, and brutally honest truths from a true original. Welcome to Never Die Wondering. Welcome to episode 41 of Never Die Wondering, Mick Malone in his own words, a podcast that explores the life and legend of Michael John Malone OAM. My name is Toby Malone, Mick's son and co-host of this podcast series, joined by the man whose name is in the title, Mick Malone. G'day, Dad.
How you going, mate? All right.
Good. Yeah, good. Good. Enjoying the as the stories get more and more familiar. It's sort of interesting to hear it out loud again, because a lot of these things are things that are in my memory, including time in Duntroon. We talked about a lot last couple of episodes about how we were living in Duntroon, which is where the Royal Military College is to this day. Been around for more than 100 years there in Canberra, and right next to the Australian Defence Force Academy, and lots of good things that are going on there. So it was interesting that when we were there, lots of different things were going on, including this next chapter. There was a real change in the makeup of Duntroon. It just happened to be right in the middle of the time you were there. So, and as we'll get into this, when Portsea. Everyone came up from Portsea to Duntroon and changed how it all looked. Was that a bit of a
Yeah,
shock?
different kettle of fish, I tell you what.
Yeah, and were the officer cadets who came up from Portsea, could they keep up? I mean, were they on the same level?
Oh, in a lot of cases, they were a lot better than the Duntroon cadets,
Hmm.
because they were all ex-soldiers. A lot of them were anyway. So, when you're a digger in one area and come down to Portsea, then your knowledge level of military stuff is far greater than these gormless young officers.
Right. And so Portsea was disbanded in the end of '85. What was the reason for its disbanding? Was
Well, they just decided to fold their tents. Vietnam War was over. Skyville had been disbanded, which was the National Service Officers College up in New South Wales. And Portsea was next.
Hmm.
They disbanded and sent the existing cadets to Duntroon.
Right. Hmm. Okay, well, why don't we read a little bit about it then? So let's get into it. Today we're reading chapter 38 of Two Ranks on the Road, 35 Years of Australian Special Forces Service by Michael J. Malone OAM, published in 2024 by Imprimatur Books, Perth. This chapter, entitled OCS Descends on Duntroon, covers pages 285 to 290 in the print edition. The ebook may have slightly different numbering, so follow from the beginning of the chapter. As we read, the body of the text will be read by author Mick Malone. Whenever we come across a footnote, we will pause in the least disruptive way possible, and I will read the footnote. And now, without further ado, Two Ranks on the Road.
Chapter 38, OCS Descends on Duntroon, 1986. What was he going to do? Send me to Vietnam? At the end of 1985, Officer Cadet School OCS Portsea was disbanded, so all the cadets came to Duntroon. And their wotus and sergeants from their instructional staff joined us in the sergeant's mess. Mick, what are we going to do? Said Jazza. After some thought, I said, jam labels. So it was decided everyone in the mess would wear their name on a jam label till all were acquainted. We also allocated the billiard room to accommodate the OCS trophies and small pieces of furniture they had brought with them. The drillies spent a large proportion of their time when they had cadets on the playground searching for Portsea buttons. Many of the Portsea cadets decided to keep their old school memory alive by secreting a button on their uniforms. The sleeves were the most favoured, but the eagle eyes of Don Raw's team soon discovered them. Extra duties ensued. The senior cadets joined RMC senior cadets, and the junior cadets joined our second class to graduate next year. There were some sharp operators amongst the Portsea crowd, many of whom had served in the ranks in infantry battalions. There was also a platoon of women, which put the cat among the pigeons. We were told there would be no difference between sexes, which was easier said than done, as they had difficulties when physically competing against the men. Our PDIs had to tone down the gym work and runs and obstacle courses. And we in the field wing were to make sure that they could carry the required loads. This was all a nightmare, of course, which the Commandant declared that all would graduate. This all came to a head when we took first class to the Jungle Training Centre, JTC, Canungra, in the mountains west of Brisbane. We had an ex-AATTV and SASR PDI, Ray Heathcote, there to torture the cadets. On the first run up Heartbreak Hill on the road to the EBR range, all of the women, some 20, fell back and couldn't keep up. We were running in greens and sand shoes and a pretty good bitumen road. Some of our male slackers also dropped back, ostensibly to help their fellow cadets. This happened again the next day, so we went to the boss and requested they form a women's platoon. This was duly done, and we got on with things. Predictably, those same dudes who fell back to assist the women fell back again, so there was no arms corps aspirations amongst them, thankfully. I was pretty fit then and recall racing the PDI down the hill on the way back to the barracks one day. I came second, but gave him a good run for his money. On completion of the exercise, we packed up and boarded trucks back to the airfield for pickup. It had been a successful exercise because we lost no one except for a couple of the women who went to the boss and pulled out, no longer interested in serving. During this period, we hired a car and drove from Canberra to WA to attend the wedding of Joe's close friend, Vicky Masterton. We'd only gone about 100 kilometres when Georgia was violently ill in the back seat and gave our hire car a good covering of whatever she'd been eating that morning. Poor little tacker. She was beside herself. It was beyond belief that such a tiny child could produce such a volume. We pulled into a service station, past Yass to clean up, pillows, stuffed toys and everything. Once we got her cleaned up, we were on our way again and with no further trouble. The kids were dosed on travel sickness medication. The trip went swimmingly after that, driving non-stop to make the wedding in 2J. The trip back held no such dramas, I'm pleased to say. We'd been gone for a week and poor old Ace must have thought we'd abandoned him. He was one of the very happy dog, so were the kids. Back at the college, it was all hands to the pumps for another year. With the remaining first class, I was planning to spend more time with my family this year, but we were soon off to the bush, Talaganda again. On one exercise, we dismounted the infill truck and ran into the bush to wait. We had 2 sections of 10, and when we moved off, we followed a re-entrant, and pretty soon we found a marijuana plantation. We did what every good-minded citizen would do, and we pulled up all the plants, put them in sandbags, and informed the police of their location.
Footnote, we never heard a word back. Truth be known, I should have allowed the cadets to help themselves, but I knew that would have been the end of my army career.
A lot of map reading and compass work this year. Some of the stars were ex-serving soldiers and a couple who repeated. We relied on these to assist the ADFED arrivals. who had been doing degrees for 4 years with very little experience in the field. We went up to JTC Canunga again, and with this class performing very well, we had covered a lot of ground and we're confident we would be unleashing a few good young officers on the unsuspecting giggers in the battalions. As the cadets who came across uh, from ADFA at the completion of their degrees, we immersed them all in things bush and field, from range practices to navigation, medical lectures, leadership lectures, and military history. We spent a lot of time on the program under the indefatigable drilly Wotu Don Raw, a big New Zealander who was whipping them into shape for their big graduation day later in the year. Our next exercise was a trip to Townsville, North Queensland. We boarded army buses and headed out towards High Range. It was to be a defence exercise where the cadets would establish a series of defence trenches and bunkers on High Range. They would dig in for 5 days down to stage 3, that is, a trench 5 foot deep with an overhead protection bay revetted in corrugated iron, reinforced with star pickets and wire. Concertina and bastard wire were also used. All these stores were delivered up to High Range by 3 trucks from engineer stores at Laverack Barracks in Townsville. One of the best senior cadets was allocated CQMS duties with three offsiders. Their roles involved issuing stores to the platoons and keeping records. The cadets had been issued 5 days of hard rations before they left Laverack, and there was a supply of water in jerry cans. We also had a couple of medics attached to keep an eye open for possible injuries. They also built a field latrine, both men's and women's, back behind the stores dump. We, the staff, kept an eye on the proceedings and noted the hard workers, the slackers, and the indifferent. The other testing asset to the exercise it was carried out wearing NBC, nuclear, biological, chemical, top 3 gas mask, gas hood, and full NBC suit. It was difficult to wear this stuff in a benign environment, but it's torturous in the tropics. It was important that this would probably be the one and only time they would be in top 3 in their army career, except the real thing, God forbid. Sentries and clearing patrols were also established, and on night 5 at around 0300 hours, a sentry called out, "Stand to." A flare went up, which illuminated the ground, illuminated around 100 shadowy figures coming down the hill. After a magazine of blanks from each cadet, the order was, "Pull back." This was purely Woe-1 stuff. It was then a mad scurry out of the trench line and back through the defence stores where a head count was taken. I latched onto one of the groups as they hurtled onto the road, and we went hell for leather down the hill. The concertina effect meant that those at the rear would be running to keep up. At the front, we were blissfully unaware of this until a voice shouted, "Slow down, you blokes." It was a well-known decorated major known as Rambo to the cadets, and he wasn't happy. What was he going to do? Send me to Vietnam? A few of the good cadets really powered on, and just when most were gagging with exhaustion, we came round a corner and we were thrilled to see the buses waiting. It took about 30 minutes for the stragglers to reach us, and then it was pile on for the trip back. I wondered about clearing the defence position, but it appears that the job of the infantry company who assaulted our position. Back at Laverack, the cadets were off to the showers and the mess for lunch. Later that afternoon, we had a debrief and staff handed in reports on each of his cadets. We had all the platoon to worry about, in my case, 24. Then they were given leave to breast the bar and the digger's boozer. It was a closed camp because we would be up at Sparrows to prepare for the move back to Garbutt RAF base. where a taxi C-130 awaited. It was an uneventful flight back to RAF Fairburn, where we were met by trucks from Duntroon. It was good to get home to my loving family. The kids had been well behaved and did what they were told. They were enjoying school, although the school was a bit short of sporting equipment. It mattered little as most of the kids played on the many ovals and playgrounds that abounded in Canberra. Around October, I was informed I was to be promoted to WO1 and RSM 1 Commando Regiment in Sydney. Whilst this was great news, I had a slight sinking feeling that my chance of being RSM of SASR was out the window. Announcing this to my family, was received with elation, as it was again another adventure to look forward to. My CO at 1 Commando Regiment was to be Lieutenant Philip McNamara, who I'd worked with in SASR in the late 70s, a very good man. He'd served in Vietnam with 2RR and had been wounded in action. In the meantime, we had graduation coming up. The cadets were very towy and excited. All of them were going to graduate. I completed my reg list and visited their lines to wish them all the best. We had a mixed formal dining-in night at the Sergeant's Mess, with Jazza waxing lyrical about me and others like Cole Goodman, who were being posted out before the year ended. The cadets invited us to a party in the cadets' mess and dictated who we came as. I was Arnie Jack, complete with makeup, hair, big dress, and of course, the boxing glove. And Joe went as Flash Nick from Jinder Vic. It was a serious drunken night, and many cadets made clowns of themselves, but nothing too dramatic. One of the good cadets on Reg's list headbutted the dining room glass door. This had a dramatic effect on his career prospects. He wanted to go to infantry, but they sent him to a service corps for punishment. Such a shame, but it was what it was.
Footnote, he redeemed himself years later when he came west and did the selection course, passed it, and served as a troop commander and later an OC, a good soldier.
We spent a few days writing reports on each cadet, although the corps postings had already been determined. As predicted, the top cadets went to arms corps and the bulk to infantry as lieutenant platoon commanders. We would see quite a few of them, such as Mark Smethurst, eventually make their way west for the SAS Carter course. As grad arrived, the cadets were all abuzz. It was a marvellous parade, and we cheered when the Sword of Honour was presented. My role at the college had now come to an end.
And
End
that
of
was
chapter.
chapter 38 from Two Ranks in the Road, 35 Years of Australian Special Forces Service by Michael J. Malone, as read by the author. Yeah, 2 years. It felt like you fit a lot into 2 years at Duntroon.
Oh, mate, it was full on, but very enjoyable.
Well, and you still hear from blokes who you instructed at Duntroon
Yeah,
now. And when we released this book, a lot of them came out of the woodwork, and a few of
yeah,
them, were able to provide blurbs for the back of the book and all sorts of things. So,
yeah.
so it really sort of gave you a sense of your potential as a teacher. You really sort of started. I felt like you really embraced that opportunity.
I was a bit of a laid back teacher. I never stood on ceremony. Um, I treated everyone equally and just stood back and allowed them to basically tell me what they were doing.
Right. Which is a good strategy and it's an effective way of teaching. Um,
I just observed, and that was it. Observed and then passed on relevant information if I had to. But
yeah,
some of the instructors at Duntroon were absolute pests. They thought they were at Eton College or something, or some other standover outfit.
Yeah, so lots of shouting.
Oh yeah, it's bloody hopeless. We get a lot of arguments in the mess about that, about method of instruction. And Jazzy Smith, who was laid back, oh RSM, he agreed. He said told some of these blokes to pull their heads in.
Mm.
But some were just ridiculous. One artillery woe two was, oh God. I didn't mention him at all in here. But he was a pain in the neck.
Mm.
He had no empathy at all towards cadets, and he thought the sunshine out of his own eyeballs, you know.
Right. Well, you get a lot
But
of people who will repeat the behaviour that they endured when they were
yeah,
cadets, and they think, well, if I went through it, you've got to go through it.
yeah, there's a bit of that, I think. But
Yeah.
we had a few SAS guys there in different classes. Billy Bryden in third class, I think. Someone else in second class.
Hmm.
Me and someone else in first class. So we had them spread around the place.
Well, the thing I like about a lot of the stories is that it feels a lot like it's repeating what you were learning before you went to Vietnam, where they taught you how to be able to do every role in a patrol, so you could
Yeah,
fill in and take over. And it feels like your post-Vietnam time, you were doing the same thing. They were asking you to try different things and to be SSM here and then go be mess secretary there, and later on you'll wind up in headquarters pushing papers around, and so it feels like you got the complete military experience.
yeah, I did. I look back on it and I think, how lucky was I?
Hmm.
I had some good mentors. Um, met some fabulous people like Pat Cullinan,
Yeah,
um, who summited Mount Everest,
yeah,
which we cover later.
yeah. We'll
Um,
read about that in a couple of chapters, but
Bob
yeah.
Quap. But it was just fantastic career. I look back and I can't find any holes in it at all.
Hmm. Well, it's not over yet. We're still only just at the end of 1986, and the next episode we'll get into talking about what happens when we moved 3 hours north from Canberra to Sydney, back to your old stomping grounds. Although I don't think you spent very much time in the northern beaches when you were when Sydney was a young lad.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that in the next chapter. But that is all the time we have this week for Never Die Wondering. So join us next week for the next installment in our exploration of Mick Malone's career as we get to the 39th chapter of the book itself, entitled RSM 1 Commando Regiment. If you have a copy of Two Ranks, read along with us. I've been Toby Malone, and thank you to Mick Malone for heartily joining me on this journey.
My pleasure, mate.
Cheers. This has been Never Die Wondering, Mick Malone in his own words. For links to purchase your own copies of Mick's books, visit the show notes or mickmalone.com.au. This podcast is produced by Toby Malone, Joe Malone and Mick Malone, and engineered by Toby Malone. Theme music is The Happy Wanderer, the official SAS march, as reimagined by Cormac Malone and Meg Logue Malone. Yes, this is a family affair. This is a GM production in association with Imprimatur Books.